Hey everyone, welcome to Mary Walter Radio, the podcast. I'm so glad you could join me on this Cinco de Mayo. That means you're not out drinking. I appreciate it. James will not be here. He's working the morning show, and I so know that pain. If anyone understands that, it is me. I understand that pain, and so he will not be here. He's supposedly home going to bed. We'll see. I don't know. We'll see if he is. So last week I found out that if you were watching on Getter, that your comments were not transferring over to the stream, or was that YouTube? One of them. The comments were not transferring over to the screen, and so I'm going to try to look at the video on Getter at the same time and see how that works and see if I can read the comments that aren't making it onto the screen here that I'm looking at, so that I can transfer those comments over. The people commenting all here, Al and Bill, it says that their comments are here, so I can read those. I can't read the Getter comments. So lots to talk about tonight. One of the things that just breaking news that I wanted to go to, and I will at the end of this podcast put up the links to all the stories that I used during the course of the show, so that you can go back, you can read more about them, you could read more in more detail if you so choose. So I will get that up before it's posted up on YouTube. And please like the video. Please subscribe if you have an account on YouTube. I would appreciate that. Someone was number 100 last week, made me very happy. So that was good. So I just want to tell you, this is just coming out that the LA County DA, George Gascon, is not pursuing felony charges against the guy who attacked Dave Chappelle on Wednesday. He attacked him with what looked like a gun, but it actually had a knife in it. It had a knife and rushed the stage. I mean, what if he had stabbed Dave Chappelle? I guess you have to stab somebody before the DA will actually charge you with anything. It's a felony, but not in LA. So what does that say to people, right? Like, to me, that says that, okay, you can do whatever you want and get away with it. This is why there's so much crime in LA. And I loved that the Yapping Yentas on The View. Did you see this? So the Yapping Yentas were talking about this. And again, they are just feelings disguised as facts, because they just say it as authority, like this is a fact because I feel that this is so it must be so. And they blamed the guy, Isaiah Lee, charging the stage and attacking Dave Chappelle with a knife on Trump. It was phenomenal to watch the mental gymnastics that they had to perform to get to it's Trump's fault. It was unreal. It was absolutely unbelievable. But they somehow managed to do it. There was a guest on with them, though, who disagreed with them and said, no, that's kind of like a bridge too far to say that it's Trump. But here's the reasoning. So instead of saying, well, look what happened with Will Smith. Will Smith went up to Chris Rock and slapped him in front of the world on the stage at, what was it, at the Oscars or some self-congratulatory event in Hollywood, and nothing happened to him. There were no charges pressed against him. So instead of making that same leap, and here you have Will Smith slapping Chris Rock, two black men. So black man hitting another black man. This was a black man armed with a knife attacking another black man on a stage, almost exactly what Will Smith did and suffered no consequences for. And they blamed it on Trump because Trump ushered in an era of incivility in this country. Trump's so terrible. Trump's so horrible. Trump is so uncivil that he ushered in this era of incivility. And so, it's somehow Trump's fault. It was unbelievable. Let's see. Okay, so I can read some of the comments on Getter. M. Jenk says here, best line ever. It's good to be a Democrat. Miss you on Mornings on the Mall. Thank you. I do miss being back on radio. It's been almost a year. I totally miss it. But if I'm being honest, I don't miss the commute back and forth to DC at all. I don't miss the hours, but honestly, if they had been willing to negotiate with me, if they had been willing to say, okay, 2 weeks out of the month come down, something like that, I would have done it despite the hours. But M. Jenk, I think in Hindsight, they didn't want me. I think they were looking to cut a salary, and they didn't want anybody to see. They wanted to be seen as the woman is the one who's going here. So I think that's what happened. That's just my own personal opinion. I could be 100% wrong. Maybe they really did just want everybody down there 5 days a week, in studio, full time. Who knows? I don't know. Survivor says, who's got the money to fly to Los Angeles to get an abortion? Well, that's lovely and out of left field because we're not talking about that, but sure. So that is the breaking news that speaking of Los Angeles, Gascon is not pursuing felony charges against the guy who lunged the stage and tried to knife Will Smith. Dave Chappelle. Oh, and the other people were saying, did you see, it's Dave Chappelle's fault because he says hurtful things about transgender people. He makes jokes about everyone, but liberals suck the fun out of everything. MJ should like that too, because that's one of my sayings. Liberals suck the fun out of everything. It has got to be exhausting to wake up every single morning and wondering what the heck you're going to be outraged about today, because everything in the world offends you. Nothing is funny. Everything is so dramatic. Everything is tragic, which is why you're seeing them light their hair on fire over abortion now, because everything's so drama filled, and they go to the worst possible, extent of everything. So, all right, let's move on talking about Joe Biden. And this is from BizPack Review. Again, the links will be at the bottom in the description on YouTube if you would like to see them. Oh, Scott is Survivor 999. Hi, Scott. Scott's on in the Facebook group. If you want to join my Facebook group, it's a private group. It's political. Scott's part of it. But we have fun in there too. You just go to my public page, look for Mary Walter, public page, not my private. And you could just click the link there and I'll take you and answer some questions and we'll let you in. So Joe Biden. So, okay. The Daily Mail got some paperwork. And this paperwork is apparently flying all over the place. So a couple of days after the White House visitor logs showed us that at the time the Vice President, Joe Biden, had met with Hunter Biden's business associate while in his office. Remember, we found that out last week. We talked about Eric Schwerin. We talked about that. New emails are now reporting that Biden may have paid legal fees for his son's Chinese deals. We know that. The documents were obtained by the Daily Mail, and they focus on government transparency reports that have been submitted to the Office of Government Ethics, the OGE. Isn't that an oxymoron, government ethics? And a January 19th email from Hunter's assistant, Katie Dodge. Now, the Daily Mail compared the Office of Government Ethics filings of Biden from 2017 to 2019, and they found a discrepancy of about $5.2 million in reported income from one of his S corps that he funnels all his money through, so he doesn't have to pay as much in Social Security and Medicare and all those other taxes, which is legal. But I find it odd that he talks about, the rich not paying their fair share when he and Jill work the system to not pay their fair share. But liberal hypocrisy, right? To quote my friend Chris Plant, if it weren't for double standards, Democrats wouldn't have any standards at all. So about 5.2 million in reported income discrepancy. And this company that he pushes that money through is used for his speaking and his writing engagements. So they compared that government ethics report for that company with Joe Biden's IRS tax returns. And they don't jive. 5.2 million. Do you think if this was Donald Trump that they would have caught that oopsie a little bit? Probably somewhere along the line, they would have figured that out. Yeah. But no, when it comes to Joe Biden, nobody's bothered looking at it. Under the subject line, Hunter's Bills, Dodge reached out to the bookkeeper, Linda Shapiro, Biden's aide, Richard Ruffner, and Hunter himself to discuss an arrangement the former president had made to cover hundreds of thousands of bills for his son. The email acquired by the Daily Mail says, "Hello, VP team. I spoke with Hunter today regarding his bills. It's my understanding that Hunter's dad will cover these bills in the short term as Hunter transitions in his career. I have a list of the current bills, which I am aware. I have attached the list below." Did you see how much Joe Biden paid for Hunter? Did you see this? He's picking up his son's bills while he transitions to his new career. He picked up $737,130.61. I would have had to struggle once I was launched, if I wanted the 61 cents for my father, I would have had to justify and tell him exactly where the 61 cents was going and how I got myself into a position to need that 61 cents. $737,000. Clearly, Joe thought it was going to be paid back, including one for a company that is connected to Bohai Harvest. Now, Joe is the same year Joe is alleged to have taken responsibility for those bills was when he made the following campaign promise. No one in my family will have an office in the White House, will sit in on meetings as if they are a cabinet member, will in fact have any business relationship with anyone that relates to a foreign corporation or a foreign country, period, end of story. That was a lie. That was a lie. 20 of the money that he supposedly gave Hunter, there was over $28,000, almost $30,000 for his business dealings with Bohai Harvest, which is in fact dealing with a foreign country. And we know he lied about the Hunter's foreign business partners meeting with him. But here's the other thing. If you remember, we were told, Jen Psaki and Joe Biden, that they were going to divest. His son was going to divest from all these. He's not no longer going to be on the board of all these foreign companies. That he hasn't done that yet. Apparently, it takes a very long time to write a resignation letter and get off these boards. So his son is still dealing with foreign country. So again, another lie by Joe Biden. It's ridiculous. They never stop coming. Let's see. Okay. This is a big story. And if you watch the podcast, you'll know, I like to talk about news that you're not really hearing anywhere else. And not a lot of people are reporting on John Durham. Fox is, Newsmax is, but if you don't happen to catch a report on either one of those outlets, unless you go online and you look at Washington Examiner, you look at Epoch Times, you look at some of the other more conservative outlets, you wouldn't know what's going on with Durham at all. And the judge, Phil says, paid for with laundered money. Yeah, pretty much, Phil. All right, so Durham has been very quietly working in the background. And I always say, I feel like Bonnie Prince Charles waiting for the Queen to finally give up the throne. And in the meantime, he's just like, could somebody send me a cable when she decides to give up the throne? So Durham is trying to get some documents from the Hillary Clinton campaign, Hillary for America, and the DNC. They are holding these documents, and they are claiming client attorney privilege, right? So these are legal documents. We have the right to keep these private because it's between me and us and our attorneys. These are legal documents, so we don't have to do that. Remember when Donald Trump claimed the same thing? They told him, too bad, give it to us anyway. Democrats wanted it anyway, but they're saying, no, pump the brakes, attorney-client privilege. So what happened was, we found from Durham is Hillary for America and the DNC paid money to Perkins Coie, which is a law firm. Perkins Coie paid that money to Fusion GPS. So they were a pass-through. Perkins Coie was a pass-through for the money. Instead of them paying Fusion GPS directly, they went through the lawyers. And then they wrote off a lot of this stuff as legal fees. Well, the Federal Election Commission, a couple weeks ago, a month or so ago, settled with Hillary Clinton. We talked about what a small amount of money they had to pay as a fine for pushing some of these payments and marking them as legal fees when in fact they were not for legal fees. Okay, now, so they copped a deal, both the DNC and Hillary for America copped a deal and said that, okay, it's not for legal fees. Oh, okay. Thank you, honey. I hit the wrong one. Sorry. There we go. It's hard when I'm doing everything by myself. So it was not for legal fees. It was for other things, which of course went to Fusion GPS. It was for opposition research, right? So they copped a deal and they said, that you're right, that's what it's for. Here's our fee, mea culpa. We will never address this again, and we will never claim those fees were for legal fees. All right. So Durham comes along and they're like, whoa, attorney-client privilege. So in one case, they said it wasn't for legal fees. And now in this case, they're saying, well, attorney-client privilege is for legal fees. Well, the judge today said, no. So he didn't say no all the way, but what he said is you have to turn those 38 legal documents over to me. I will, by myself, with no one else around, I will look at these documents and I will determine whether attorney-client privilege applies to these documents. So Durham is hoping that he will be able to get these documents to use then as he continues to slowly but surely turn the screws on Hillary Clinton and the DNC. It's going to be interesting because they talk about things. The judge even said it. The judge quoted from an email by Peter Frisch, who is a co-founder of Fusion GPS with Len Simpson. The judge quoted an email from him to a reporter in October 2016, in which the Fusion co-founder said to do the blanking alpha secret comms story. And the judge said, how is that assisting Mr. Elias providing legal advice? He said it's not fact, there's a difference between fact checking and disseminating opposition research. He said it's assisting a media strategy. So that is super good news. That's great news. So he's slowly but surely making progress. And I keep being told, be patient, be patient. Durham is doing his thing. And I'm like, oh, Lord, it's taken forever for Durham to do his thing. Okay. Let's move on. Let's go to, okay. I saw this story in one place and one place only, Epic Times. And you got to pay to read the Epic Times. It's like $7 a month, but they've got some great stories in the Epic Times. A federal informant. Now, this is where my tinfoil hat goes on, okay? A federal informant who worked with federal authorities investigating links between Donald Trump as president and Deutsche Bank. Remember, that was another thing. Oh, there's all this sort of money laundering with Deutsche Bank. Oh, it's terrible. And so when Alpha Bank didn't take, they went to Deutsche Bank. Well, this federal informant who worked with federal authorities to investigate the link between Donald Trump and Deutsche Bank was found dead on Monday in Los Angeles. So, the first question out of my popped into my head, and this is terrible, was like, oh my God, where's Hillary? Was Hillary in Los Angeles on Monday? That was the first thing I thought was, where's Hillary? The Los Angeles County coroner said that Val Brockschmidt, it's got to be Dutch, was pronounced dead at 7 a.m. And Los Angeles Police Captain Kenneth Cabrera told the LA Times that officials do not suspect foul play in his death. They also did not suspect foul play in the death of Vince Foster. They also didn't suspect foul play in the death of Jeffrey Epstein. I'm just saying. There just seems to be a common thread through all of this. There's a lot of people dying who have ties to different things that ultimately go back to the Clintons. Now, I'm not saying the Clintons are involved in this one, but I don't know. I could be wrong. Sergeant Rudy Perez added that it appears that Brockschmidt, 46, was homeless. The coroner's office did not elaborate on his cause of death. He was last seen driving a red Mini Cooper April of last year, so a year ago, on Riverside Drive. He was later reported missing by his relatives. So I don't know how you go from driving a Mini Cooper to suddenly being missing to being homeless to killing yourself, if that is indeed what happened. And if it was a drug overdose, in my book, you committed suicide, because unless someone shot those drugs into you, unwillingly, you did it to yourself. A 2019 New York Times report said that Brockschmidt was the son of a Deutsche Bank executive who died via suicide in 2014. Just saying. Later in 2019, Brockschmidt told the Forensic News Network that he acquired emails of his late father and said that, quote, I informed the FBI about several of Deutsche Bank's loans to Trump. While speaking to Forensic News Network at the time, he said that he spoke to the Department of Justice in 2016 and said, I'm writing in hopes of speaking to someone at the DOJ in reference to evidence I have showing major fraud at one of the world's largest banks. Reports also indicated that Brocksmith allegedly provided documents to journalists and Fusion GPS. Boom. And it all comes back. Now, Hillary Clinton may not be involved in this, but there is one common thing in the middle of all of this. And you got Fusion GPS, and you've got all these people, and you've got this Brocksmith guy, you've got all these people, and it all goes back to maybe not Hillary, but maybe it all goes back to the Democrats. Maybe not Hillary, but boom, boom. Yeah, so crazy. So Superfreshness says, wow. Yeah, wow. Okay, so it all goes back to Fusion GPS. Forensics News Network journalist Scott Stedman reacted to Brocksmith's death, writing on Twitter, "I don't suspect foul play. Val struggled with drugs on and off." So maybe that is exactly what happened. You know, who knows? The other side of this is, well, if his dad committed suicide, he may have struggled with depression. A lot of times that runs in families. And if you combine that with a drug problem, then it makes sense. But I just thought it was really weird and creepy. All right, moving on. So when it comes to the Supreme Court, this is just something that I've noticed. You feel free to disagree with me if you would like. But one of the things I notice, the longer Durham takes, the deeper he's digging. Absolutely. But I could be dead by the time this all, comes to light. All right. So when it comes to the Supreme Court, one of the things that I have noticed is that the right wants to find out who leaked this. They want the leaker punished. And I thought, well, of course they do, because the guess, people who are betting on it are saying, oh, this came from someone on the left. Absolutely. And there are 3 liberal Supreme Court justices, and they each have 4 clerks. That's 12 people it could possibly be. And I'm not good at math, but I did that in my head. So there's 12 people that the FBI should probably be looking at. Now, I know from past experience, for instance, on the January 6th experience, remember the night before on January 5th, somebody in Washington, D.C. wandered around Washington, D.C., sat down on a bench, made a phone call, had a bag there carrying with him, and planted a bomb outside the DNC and the RNC. But they were in no rush. They hung out. And for some reason, the FBI has never found that person. Especially since they were on their phone, and you would be able to ping that, and you'd be able to get records and find out who was where, and be able to figure out who that was. They also have cameras everywhere in Washington, D.C., so they could very easily look at the license plate of the white van that this guy supposedly got in and out of. But we can't find that. So if the FBI doesn't want to find the leaker, they're not going to find the leaker. We'll never know. This story will die like so many other stories. Just get memory hold and off they go, and there's no justice done at all. The other thing that I find interesting about this is the Democrats are saying it's not about the leaker. It's not about the leaker. Who the leaker is not important. That's not important. They didn't even break a law. Who knows if they broke a law? Was it a law that was broken? So when you're saying, no big deal, that's why I think it's probably your side that did the leaking, and you know it. Adam Schiff, of all people, who hasn't met a leak about Donald Trump he doesn't love to amplify or make up. He is saying, who cares about the leaker? It's not about the leaker. Not about the leaker. You have the White House has not condemned the leak at all yet. And you had Jen Psaki asked about it, and she danced around the question. The White House has not condemned the leak. And Sheldon Whitehouse, yesterday, you had Sheldon Whitehouse with John Kennedy from Louisiana. I adore John Kennedy from Louisiana. He's hilarious. He's very snarky and very quick, and I love that. So they were having the Transparency and Accountability for 21st Century Courts hearing yesterday. This is the day after the leak. And they were discussing the leaking of this draft. And John Kennedy warned during the hearing that the leaker should be fired, disbarred, and prosecuted. And I wanted to play that audio for you, but alas, I cannot because of copyright. So, sorry. Maybe one of these days, if we start making money here, I can start playing things that are copyrighted. Super Freshness says these guys love to kill themselves. Yes, they do. And what Sheldon Whitehouse responded to John Kennedy by suggesting that the FBI should not be investigating the matter. He said, it's an interesting separation of powers question why FBI agents from the executive branch would be running around within the Supreme Court interviewing clerks and staff and justices themselves if it's not appropriate for Congress to exercise its legislative powers with regards to those standards. So Kennedy tells Sheldon Whitehouse that the United States Supreme Court has its own police force, which I did not know. Did you have any idea there were all these police forces all over Washington, D.C., like they have special police forces? I kind of think that they should have to use the police force the rest of us get, right? Like, why should the justices have their own police force? I don't know. If you've ever walked through Washington, D.C., you're taking your life in your hands. They should be protected by the same people we're protected by. And then maybe they wouldn't be defunding the police. Maybe there would be more police and we would all benefit. It's like the Capitol Police. Like, wait, what? You have your own police? How come? How come you just don't get a security guard with, a can of pepper spray and no gun like the rest of us get when we go to work? How come you get a police officer? But anyway, Kennedy says, I don't think it's at all uncommon to have police forces cooperate. Kennedy says, I don't care who it is. I don't care what the politics is, that it's not right. Whitehouse said, very snarkily, because I saw it, I guess we'll begin by trying to identify what law that person might have violated. In other words, they didn't break a law. There's no law that has been broken. And I keep hearing there's no law that has been broken. And maybe there is no law that has been broken. But someone needs to be punished for what they did. I'm sure there's something here that they could be punished for. I'm sure there is. Okay. And you might have seen this story. I wanted to talk about it just because not all the news outlets report some of this stuff. So if you've heard some of these, I apologize. Because I try to keep this, as I said, to news that you haven't heard. Probably. So I like to bring new stuff as just opposed to regurgitating the same old stuff or stuff that you've already seen today. So I try to bring new stuff to the table. Did you hear that the repairman, that John Mack Isaacs guy who got Hunter Biden's laptop in his shop, and then Hunter Biden just never came and picked it up? And then he said, wow, there's stuff in here that people should know about. This is a big deal. Well, his life has been subsequently ruined, of course. You can play the video. Many copyright laws allow that. Not on YouTube. Sorry, Scott. Not on YouTube. I can't play the videos. Copyright does not allow it, at least from what I've been told. So, oh, you're welcome. Super Fresh says, thanks for bringing new stuff to the table. I wish I could share this and put it on the screen, but I cannot. So that guy, John Paul Mack Isaacs, had his life turned upside down. So Miranda Devine in the New York Post broke the story that he has now decided to fight back. He lost his business. He's been harassed for 18 months. He had to move out of the state of Delaware. So he said, after fighting to reveal the truth, all I want now is for the rest of the country to know that there was a collective and orchestrated effort by social media and mainstream media to block a real story with real consequences for the nation. This was collusion led by 51 former pillars of the intelligence community and backed by words and actions of a politically motivated DOJ and FBI. And so he's suing. He said, I want this lawsuit to reveal that collusion and more importantly, who gave the marching orders. He is suing Adam Schiff, CNN, Politico, and the Daily Beast. I love this. I love to see people fighting back, like the Covington Catholic kid Nick Sandman, like Kyle Rittenhouse, and now John Paul Mack Isaac. Because what they do is they smear the heck out of you, and it's really bad. So good for him, and I hope he wins. He's, as I said, got the he turned a copy of the laptop's hard drive over to the FBI in December of 2019. So almost a year before the election. And 8 months later, he then, because nothing happened, he alerted Rudy Giuliani, who was Trump's lawyer at the time, and gave him a copy of the hard drive also. And then he gave a copy to the New York Post. And then we know the Post then broke the story 3 weeks before the election, and everybody shut it down. But Mack Isaacs says that Twitter initially labeled my action hacking. So for the first day after my information was leaked, because he was then doxxed, I was bombarded with hate mail and death threats revolving around the idea that I was a hacker, a thief, and a criminal. Without any intel, the head of the Intel Committee, Schiff, decided to share with CNN and its viewers a complete and utter lie, a lie issued in the protection of a preferred presidential candidate. He said that he has since endured false accusations of being a Russian spy and a, quote, stooge for Vladimir Putin. In the suit, Mack claims that Schiff defamed him in an interview with CNN 2 days after the Post began publishing the emails from the laptop. In the interview with Wolf Blitzer, Schiff told Wolf Blitzer, and he didn't cite any evidence because Adam Schiff never cites any evidence. He says everything is if it's gospel, and then just puts it out there. And of course, he also has proof of Russian collusion from Donald Trump. We never saw that either. He said, we all know that this whole smear on Joe Biden comes from the Kremlin. That's been clear for well over a year now, that they've been pushing this false narrative about the vice president and his son. And so Isaac is suing because he said, I was not in collusion with the Kremlin. But that's what Adam Schiff is going out there saying, that this was all collusion with the Kremlin. And his name is attached to it. He was the first domino. Now, he didn't mention him by name, so who knows? He was forced to close his computer repair business after people started throwing vegetable, eggs, and dog poop at his store, and he had to go into exile in Colorado for over a year because of this. The suit claims that CNN knowingly broadcast false and defamatory information. The story that the laptop was linked to Russian disinformation, causing Mack significant damage, including the closing of his repair shop. Let's see. They accused the plaintiff of committing an infamous crime, i.e. treason, by working with the Russians to commit a crime against the United States of America by attempting to undermine American democracy and the 2020 presidential election. He is also suing the Daily Beast and Politico of peddling disinformation about the laptops in 2 articles published on both sites. The Daily Beast claimed the laptop was purloined, fancy word for stolen. It's like an old-timey word, right? It's like a 1920s. He purloined the loin. Like he purloined the bicycle. That's a very 20s thing. In which they say that, basically he stole the computer. And on Politico, they had a story which you had all of those Intel 50 guys, former Intel officers, who said that, this is Russian disinformation. Now, he did previously sue Twitter and lost and wound up. He tried to sue Twitter unsuccessfully last year, and he also ended up having to pay their legal fees, $175,000 as well. He's seeking at least $1 million in damages, but the number will be, punitive damages, compensatory damages for $1 million, punitive damages, which will be a much bigger number and will be determined at trial. He lost his business, his friendships, and his honorable standing in the community. And this attempt is to try to make that right. Now, he's got better lawyers this time around, and this is why he's coming back for a second bite at the apple. His case has been taken pro bono by the America Project, which was founded by former General Michael Flynn, brother Joe Flynn, and a businessman named Pat Byrne. If anyone knows what it's like to have these people come after you and ruin your life, it's Michael Flynn. That poor man lost everything because of these people, and no one is ever held accountable. And that's a big problem. That's a big problem. Okay, let's see. Probably going to end a little early today, but so I have some questions that I want to ask you. If you would like, if you want to leave your comments on Gitter, I'll read them from there. If you leave them on YouTube, they'll come up on the screen here. Joe Biden, and they were talking about this a lot today on Fox, and so I went over, of course, to MSNBC to see how they were talking about it, and it's no big deal. Like they hate MAGA. They it's the root of all evil, and this is what the left does. The left tries to they smear the opposition. Trump was Hitler. If you follow him, you're a Nazi. Nazis are bad people, so I can punch you, right? They have their black bloc. And Hitler had the brown shirts. I'm sorry, but Democrats have the ones out in black bloc, who immediately show up wherever they need to be, miraculously, fully masked, can't tell who they are. They come with weapons, And they do things like break up peaceful campaign rallies in a public park for a politician who happens to be a Republican. They start throwing stuff. They show up with torches, which I thought was interesting because I thought tiki torches were racist. Apparently not. But then the left goes, well, that just proves that they're not ours. Okay. Um, they're all over social media now. Somebody's funding them, but apparently we don't want to find out. And they're allowed to post on social media. They're just going to have walk-bys. It's going to be peaceful. Come assemble peacefully. And they're going to walk by the conservative justices' homes. Their addresses have been doxxed, of course. And this is what the left does. They are fascists because fascists silence opposition voices. That's what Hitler's brown shirts did. They would come in and break up campaign meetings of the opposition, just like Antifa does for the Democrats. And that's what they're doing with Roe v. Wade, and they're trying to intimidate these justices. So Biden yesterday said, where he called the MAGA crowd the most extreme political organization that has existed in recent American history. And I'm glad he said recent because I think the KKK was far more radical and they were Democrats. So he probably didn't want to bring that up. But I'm going to ask you a question here, and I'm going to go into some more, but has the left pushed too far? You know, Joe Biden just decided, I'm just going to have my own deplorables moment, and he'll get away with it. Hillary didn't get away with it. Joe Biden will get away with it. Joe Biden will get away with it. He's only 2 years into his presidency. They've got to let him get away with it. So that'll be buried, and then everyone will say, yes, they're horrible, and they're very, very radical. But that's what they do. If you believe in MAGA, if you own a MAGA hat, you are an insurrectionist. You are dangerous. You are a terrorist. You want to overthrow the country. So because of that, we have the right to spy on you. We have the right to assault you. We have the right to silence you. And if the left, because the left can't win with their ideas, especially since they push so far to the left, that the only way they can win is by silencing the opposition, right? Parents at school board meetings couldn't speak. Remember, parents at school board meetings being arrested because they wanted to talk and defend their children. So the Democrats, I think, made this play with leaking the Roe v. Wade stuff to try to rile up the base and get them excited because they constantly have a can of kerosene and a lighter to light their hair on fire every time, you know, one of the leading Democrats or Nancy Pelosi says go and tells them something, and they have temper tantrums. They're children. And they stop the world and we're going to burn this down. Blah, 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 blah. They don't even know what they're talking about because Roe v. Wade being overturned doesn't end abortion in America. But they have no clue. They're dumb. They're useful idiots to the left. But has the left pushed too far? Because I see them pushing too far. They push too far with parents. They push too far. They're pushing too far with parents now, not with just CRT, but teaching you that your kid's racist. Oh, that's CRT. But the gender stuff in classrooms, parents posting everywhere. If you follow Libs of TikTok on Twitter, which is a great account, you'll see pictured word problems for math, and it's politics. Like, wait a minute, how is this about and the Republican is this many, and so and so is a Democrat and he has 10 oranges, and so and so is a Republican and they have only 4 oranges. Who's the better farmer? Like, it's just dumb stuff. The kids, it has nothing to do. You don't even know what class they're teaching. And then I think with Joe Biden, he said several times in his speech, he trashed half the country. He trashed people who support Donald Trump or support the MAGA movement, like what Ron DeSantis is doing. And to me, MAGA is just wanting to enforce the laws on the books, not having an open southern border, parents being in control of what their kids are learning in school, right? Parents, it's not, you don't own my kid, I own my kid. The idea of saying, okay, the majority of the country, Europe, the standard for abortion around the world seems to be no more than 15 months. As a woman, if you're pregnant by the time 15 weeks, months. Can you imagine? It's like an elephant. 15 weeks. By the time 15 weeks rolls around, you're pregnant. And you have to make a decision. When 1 month rolls around, you're pregnant. So you know, we have the same standard for abortion as like China and North Korea. The rest of the world is 15 months, and the majority of Americans, 15 weeks. Why do I keep saying that? 15 weeks. Majority of Americans say, okay, 15 weeks is the cutoff. I would go even less than that, but that's just me. I would say, you know, being a woman, I'd be like, you kind of know at 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 8 weeks. Yeah. 8 weeks would be fine with me for the cutoff. You had something, you got to do something. I'm also a big fan of, if you don't want to have kids, use birth control, or don't have sex if you don't have birth control with you, or you are not currently using birth control. No one's forcing you to do it. So that's just me, but I think they're pushing too far with all of this. And I think people are seeing the hypocrisy. The media will never question him on any of it. You're right, Michael. They won't. They absolutely will not. And that's the problem. We don't have media in this country. We have a propaganda arm of the DNC. That's what we have in this country. We do not have media. Super Freshness says 100%. Yeah, they're pushing too far. I will tell you, I always said that I was libertarian, being that I was fiscally conservative and socially liberal. Oh, hell no. The left has moved so far to crazy town on the left that I find myself moving further to the right. At least I think I'm moving further to the right, because I find myself agreeing with Republicans more and more. And I am not a registered Republican. I'm nothing, because in New Jersey, you can't be a registered independent. You're just unaffiliated. So I'm nothing. But the hypocrisy too, you know, I keep hearing about women's rights, women's rights. I'm like, wait a minute. 2 weeks ago, you guys were rejoicing over a pregnant man emoji. So why is this just a woman's issue? You're a man, sit down. You can't have, this is not your issue. Wait a minute. You just got finished telling me that men can get pregnant. We have colleges that have feminine hygiene products in men's bathrooms because there's some guy on campus who feels like a woman and thinks he can get his period. So we're going to play that game, and we all have to join in the fantasy of all of this. And again, Lourdes says 10 weeks. Oh, excuse me, Linnea, 10 weeks. Yeah, right, Linnea? If you don't know you're pregnant by 10 weeks, you got bigger problems. You didn't pay attention in school. I don't care if you want to become a woman or you want to become a dude, whatever, that's fine. But they only give you 2 choices when you decide to transition. What about the other 37? Why can't you transition into a pan, flu, cis, whatever, all those words that I don't even know what half of them mean, most of them mean? We're all supposed to sit here and pretend that the man has menstrual cramps. I'm like, no, why am I forced to pretend this? So I'm going to look at you and I'm like, okay, you do you lay in bed all day, knock yourself out, dude. But in the back of my brain, I'm like, you're a lunatic, because you don't have menstrual cramps right now, because you're not menstruating. So I'm not quite sure why I have to sit here and pretend, play along with this fantasy. If he was 3 pretending he's a unicorn, okay, I can do that. But when you're 35, not so much. So I think they've pushed too far. And I think this leak of the Supreme Court stuff was kind of like a last-ditch effort to get their base together, maybe bring in some of the people who are independent but believe, or are outraged by Roe v. Wade being overturned and aren't going to take the time to actually read it or actually find out what it really means, the low information voter, and get them over to their side to try to salvage the midterms. I think that's what this is about. I think this is about salvaging the midterms. And when politics is your God, when your religion, it's okay to blow away norms because the end justifies the means. All the time. Let me see. Oh, there's more comments over here. Bear with me, people. I have Getter Getter does not transfer over to here, so I have to go over here and read. Yesterday I did not. Last time I did not. M. Jenks says, unfortunately, people can't see through the gaslighting to get to the hypocrisy. Yeah, but I think more people are starting to see it. I think there's more people now. For instance, Joe Biden, while he's trying to defend abortion, says, I'm just a child. Oh, wait, he says, I believe I have the rights that I have, not just because the government gave them to me, which you believe, but because I'm just a child of God. I exist. And I'm like, you're using that argument to defend abortion? Like, to me, the needle scraped across the record. I'm like, oh God, somebody let Joe Biden out without a teleprompter. They're gonna clean up. You're gonna have to clean this up again. There's just somebody who follows him around with a mop and a bucket, just cleaning up his messes everywhere he goes. To defend abortion, he says, I'm just a child of God. I exist. Okay. Okay. Just, so the hypocrisy of all of this entire thing, they pushed women off the hierarchy of victimhood. Women were at the top for a while, and then they just used women as a stepping stone to get LGBTQ and all the other special groups above them. And Black people, sorry, you're at the bottom now. They used you early on to build that pyramid. You are at the bottom. And don't think any differently, because you are. They take you for granted. You're going to sit there and you're going to hold up their little pyramid for them, and they're just going to totally keep screwing you over. And women were right on top of you. They used you to climb up, to put women up there, and then they just kept going up from there. Christians, Jews, you're at the bottom too. So I don't know. I think people are tired of the hypocrisy, and maybe M. Jenk is right that people can't see through the gaslighting to understand the hypocrisy. But even the mayor out in, I've got Gascon stuck in my head, but the mayor of San Francisco used to be married to Kimberly Guilfoyle. Big smile, French Laundry, that guy. He's in trouble now, because now he did not acknowledge trans men, because he talked about women and women's rights. I was like, it's hilarious. It's just hilarious. Yeah, that's a great question, James. Nancy Pelosi will not lock up the liberal insurrection, because notice they didn't lock up anybody from the Summer of Love in 2020. And you're going to have another Summer of Love this year. You watch. There's going to be rioting. There is going to be attacks on police all over again. And that's exactly what the left wants, right? They did it going into the general election in 2020. They're going to do it going into the midterms in 22. Mark my words. Maybe I'm wrong, and I hope I am wrong. I'm moving right. Maybe I am. Al. I could be moving right. Okay. Limits on Supreme Court justices. What do you think about that? You can leave your comments. I'll read them, and I'll put them up on the screen as they come in. What do you think about term limits on Supreme Court justices? A survey was done by morning consult Politico, and it was released Wednesday. They started it right after the that ruling was, well, not ruling, but that draft was leaked. Gavin Newsom, thank you, Michael, thank you. Right after that ruling, the draft was released, and they asked people about setting term limits for justices. 66% of voters said that they approve of term limits for justices. I'm okay with that, but that could be a double-edged sword, because you could wind up with a majority, Republican, and then a majority Democrat, and the rules are just going to be like this. They're going to be all over the place, and the country's just going to keep going from extreme to extreme to extreme. So I don't know if I necessarily like that. In a way, I kind of like it, because I think the conservative justices, and looking at Roberts, I think it's easy to become a liberal, because all you have to do is follow your feelings. If I feel that it's right, then it is right. Whereas to be a conservative, you have to kind of tamp your feelings down. Like, I really want this to be the truth, but it's not the truth. So I have to think about it, and I have to go with that. So I think it's easy to be a liberal. But if we have term limits for the president, we have term limits for the Supreme Court, why don't we have term limits for Congress? That's where I think it would be the most effective, in Congress. That's what I would like. So I'm on the fence about term limits for the Supreme Court. I don't know. And the only reason people are talking about it now is because Democrats think they're not going to get their way. And so they want to blow it up, because that's what they do. They blow up every institution they don't like, where they can't get their way. If they can't control it, they just want to blow it up. So that's what, that's what you're hearing now, I think. They also asked people their feelings on placing an age cap on the justices. 64% of voters approve of that. I don't approve of that, because I think you can be, even though I didn't agree with Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I think that she said that there were problems with Roe v. Wade. Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So I think Ruth Bader Ginsburg was very smart. I think she had all her marbles up until the end. So I don't see why someone who is like Ruth Bader Ginsburg and it still has everything going, should not be allowed to continue to serve. Somebody like Joe Biden, on the other hand, he is a walking, advertisement for age limits. But for some people, I know some people who are so smart. My husband's aunts, one of them died at 107 when her sisters were alive and they were in like their 90s, early hundreds. They were doing the New York Times crossword puzzle. They were totally together. I know other people who in their 70s, you can see the decline. So it's a very individual thing. So I don't know if I like that blanket term limit thing because I don't know if it's necessarily fair. They also, let's see, they also think that justices should be bound by a code of ethics that all the other federal judges are required to follow. And I think that's hilarious. Yeah, good luck with that. Okay. It's like criminals. It's like, well, we have gun laws. I don't understand why people have guns. Okay. I can't figure that out either. 57% of voters also support balancing the court with an equal number of Democrats, Republicans, and independents. 28% disapprove of that. I just think at that point, you're going to wind up with 80 people on the Supreme Court, and it's just out of control. So if you want to leave your comments about that, there's some here. Hold on. I'm trying to get to them. Scott says, I like them to be senior citizens because they're always learning. Joe Biden is a walking, super fresh. Joe Biden is a walking advertisement for age limit. Yeah, I did say that. Okay, last one, and then we're done, and we'll try to do this next week. I'm not 100% sure I'm doing this next week. I'm going to try, but my IT department will not be here. So I'll do my best, but if you come here and there's nothing here next week, it's because I couldn't get it going. I had to share this one story with you. I like to go out with fun. Jerry, it's more like a stumbling, bumbling, shuffling advertisement for term limits. Yes, you're 100% right, Jerry. A guy in South Florida, Florida man story, got in the show with a Florida man story. This guy recently purchased a Ford GT for $706,000. Boys and their toys, $706,000. It was a Gulf Oil Heritage Edition Ford GT and was purchased at auction last month. $706,000. Okay. Superfresh got to run. Great to listen to. Love your research. Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that, Superfresh. Don't go. You got to hear what happens to the Florida man, though, Superfresh. Okay. He crashed it into a palm tree in Boca. Pictures of the crash posted on social media by a Florida resident show a blue and orange coupe mangled in the front of it's all mangled up on a sidewalk. A police report obtained by Road and Track magazine said that a man named Robert Guarini was the driver. He lost control of the vehicle while shifting gears and was, quote, unfamiliar with how to drive a stick shift. Now, I understand that driving a stick shift is lost art. All of our cars are stick except for one. One of our cars is not, and that was the car that I was driving back and forth to Washington, D.C., because it's a hybrid. I bought a hybrid to make that trek, twice a week, back down and back. So I have a hybrid, and that's an automatic. I find automatics boring. I love a stick. I've always owned a stick. That's all I've ever driven is a stick. And I understand now nothing ever comes in a stick. Like there's a lot of cars you can't even get in a stick. Like you have a sports car and it's an automatic with one of those faux flipper things, to make you feel like you're driving a stick with you hit with your pinky in the air and you hit. No, that's not driving a stick. And that I love having a stick because most thieves don't know how to drive a stick. So they're not going to steal your car because they have no clue how to drive them. Young people have no clue how to drive a stick. And so it's incredible. But can you imagine spending $706,000 on a car that you don't know how to drive and taking it and driving it and wrecking it? I'm just like, oh my God. Oh my God. He said, I don't want people to think I was racing at 90 miles an hour. I was going 35. Okay, if you don't know, when I got my first stick, I was living alone in Texas. My first car, bought my car. It's a stick. Okay, I'm gonna learn how to drive it. And I went out and I practiced on my own. And I was funny story is in Fort Worth, Texas, and I had to learn how to do it on a hill because there are hills in Texas in Fort Worth, believe it or not. So I went to the bank after hours and they had a parking deck. So I would go outside. So I would go up the outside and like stop and then try to, figure out how to do it. And cops stopped me. They were patrolling. They're like, "What are you doing here?" and everything. So I told them what I was doing. The cop taught me how to how to hold the car, the clutch on a hill. He got out. He's like, "I'll show you." And it was great. He taught me how to do it. So I learned how to do it. But it is definitely a lost art. Yeah, a profile on the auction company's website says it's 550 horsepower and can accelerate 0 to 60 in 3.4 seconds with a top speed of 220 miles an hour. And that's all in the past tense because the car no longer is here. The car is gone. Too bad. Well, thank you very much for joining me. Like I said, I will try to be here next week. I don't know if I'm going to make it, but I'm going to do my best to try to be here next week, 7 o'clock. And somewhere along the line, very soon, I know I keep saying this, we're going to have an announcement for you. But as I told you, all of the links to all the stories will be on the YouTube. If you go just search on Mary Walter Radio, if you're watching on Getter, search on Mary Walter Radio. If you want to see any of the links for any of the articles that I talked about, they'll all be there. Please like the video and also subscribe if you're I guess you have to have a profile on YouTube to subscribe, but please do that. We would appreciate that. Hopefully James will be here next week as well. Thank you so much for all your support. Mwah. Love you. Have a great week.